All right. Today we're gonna take a deep dive into something pretty intense. We're talking about Putin's red lines in Ukraine. You know those lines he doesn't want anyone crossing. And we've got this Washington Post article from September 22nd, 2024. It's called "With Nuclear Option Unlikely, Putin Struggles to Defend His Red Lines." And right off the bat, that title really struck me. I mean, we see those images of like Russian military parades, all that firepower, but are those threats still working? Are people even scared anymore?
Yeah, it's like that old saying, the emperor has no clothes. The article basically argues that these nuclear threats, which used to be Putin's go-to power move, they're starting to lose their punch.
Right.
The world's kind of caught on to his game.
It's like he's playing a weak hand and everyone at the table knows it. And there's this one part, it actually quotes a Russian official.
Really?
Yeah, they're talking about how there's this immunity to these threats now, like nobody's really buying it anymore. And do you remember that whole thing about Russia maybe bombing mock-ups of London and
Oh,
Washington?
yeah, that was,
That was something.
even inside Russia, people were like, okay, maybe that's a bit much.
Yeah, it all feels a bit like, remember that story, The Boy Who Cried Wolf? If you keep making threats and never follow through, people are going to stop taking you seriously.
So if these nuclear threats aren't working anymore, what's Putin going to do next?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the article actually does a good job exploring some other options, some other levers he might pull.
Okay, so we're not talking nukes, but things could still get pretty scary, huh? Yeah. Unfortunately, Putin's playbook isn't exactly full of peaceful solutions.
So these other options Putin has, they might not be as dramatic as, launching a nuke, but they could be even more worrying in some ways.
Yeah, that's right. We could be talking about things like sabotage,
Hmm.
proxy wars, that kind of thing.
Okay, so those are some pretty loaded terms.
Yeah.
Can you break those down a little?
Sure, so sabotage is pretty straightforward. It's basically disrupting things.
Yeah.
Messing with infrastructure, maybe cyber attacks, things that sow chaos and make it harder for countries to function.
And proxy wars, what are those exactly?
So basically, it's where powerful countries back different sides of a conflict, but they don't directly fight each other.
So it's like they're fighting, but not really.
Exactly. They're using other people to fight for them, providing weapons, funding, that sort of thing.
And the article specifically mentions the Houthis in Yemen, right?
Yeah, that's a good example. They've been causing major problems with shipping in the Red Sea.
And Russia supports them.
Well, they provide some support. It's all very murky, which is part of the point.
So it's all about plausible deniability.
Exactly. It's much easier to create chaos when you can say, well, it wasn't us exactly.
This is scary stuff.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Because these tactics, they have real-world consequences. Cyber attacks can shut down power grids, disrupt supply chains.
That affects everyday people like us.
Absolutely. It's not just some abstract geopolitical game.
And what I found really interesting, the article suggests that Putin might be even more worried about the trend of Western support, more than any specific action.
Now, that's interesting.
Yeah, like he's more concerned about the increasing support for Ukraine over time, rather than any one thing the West is doing right now.
So he's thinking long-term, trying to get ahead of the curve.
Exactly. He sees the West getting more and more resolute in its support of Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's a problem for him.
It's like he's constantly looking over his shoulder.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And that feeling, that constant uncertainty, it becomes a weapon itself. It's like he's playing mind games with the whole world.
And he's a master of that.
And that's where this whole strategic ambiguity thing comes in, right?
Exactly.
The article talks about how Putin uses uncertainty as a weapon.
It's fascinating, really.
Like if nobody knows what he's going to do next.
Everyone's kind of frozen, waiting to see who blinks first.
So how do you even begin to negotiate with a guy like that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because on one hand, you want to be firm, right? Show him we're serious. There are lines we won't let you cross.
Right.
But then there's that saying about cornering a wounded animal.
Exactly. You don't want to push him too far.
It's like walking a tightrope.
It really is a delicate balancing act.
And then just when you think it can't get any more complicated,
What now?
the article throws this out there.
It may.
They suggest that Putin might try to escalate things before the U.S. elections.
Oh, boy.
I mean, it makes a twisted kind of sense, right?
Yeah, unfortunately it does.
Russia sees the U.S. elections,
As a chance to stir up trouble.
take advantage of the chaos.
A divided America benefits Russia.
So we're not just talking about a regional conflict anymore.
This has the potential to blow up into something much bigger.
And that's what's so scary about all of this, right?
It's the uncertainty, the not knowing what's coming next,
Take
while we're
posture.
all focused on these red lines. The reality is Putin's ultimate goals haven't changed. He wants to put Russia back on top.
And he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there?
Well, this has been a pretty intense deep dive.
To say the least.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from Putin's nuclear threats
That are starting to ring a little hollow.
to his more insidious tactics,
Sabotage, proxy wars, the whole 9 yards.
and of course that looming shadow of the U.S. elections. It's a lot to process.
It really is.
But here's the thing I always come back to. Knowledge is power.
Right, absolutely.
The more we understand about what's happening in the world,
The better equipped we are to make sense of it all.
and hopefully make informed decisions about the future. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.